Greetings there, everybody. It is GleeCon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft as we continue our side track of the oddities and non-canon lore. On our last episode, we did look at Durotar, the founding of it in Chronicles. Just a little recap of what we saw kind of in the first episode of the bonus campaign of Warcraft 3. And on the last thing that we did in our side campaign, we've been looking at the world of the Warcraft, the role-playing game campaign setting, and we just looked at some stuff about the religion and some of the equipment. So we're going to continue along with that as we do the fourth chapter, which is going to talk about the magic. What I really am interested in, other than any flavor text, is overlap between this role-playing game and what will become the World of Warcraft. So stay a while and listen as we look at Chapter 4, Magic. So there's magic in Dungeons and Dragons, there's magic in the World of Warcraft. So it starts off with a discussion of arcane magic. Now, one thing that's notable here is I'm looking at these words, yet arcane magic has a dark genesis. And meaning a dark, a dark genesis, a dark beginning. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think arcane magic, I'm trying to remember where it ultimately comes from. I don't think it's dark necessarily. But by that same token, neither is the Burning Crusade. If you remember, the old ones are in direct opposition to the light. The Burning Crusade were more something else, and so maybe arcane magic is coming from that. I'd have to look at the order versus chaos and life versus death, like that little opposition. But I don't think that necessarily arcane magic comes from that. They're saying it comes from the Well of Eternity and stuff. And I do think there's maybe some kind of connection between the two. But arcane I think is different from fel magic and stuff like that. So it says that it is a drug. I think it can be. There's definitely some argument to be made that that's still considered the case, at least for the ones that are tied into the pure wells. It says there aren't explicit rules governing the corrupting effects, and that's true even for the game. But again, arcane magic having a sinister nature, I don't know. Maybe I just missed out on that class in Warcraft school, but I just don't feel like that's exactly true. Wielders of the arcane can be mages. They talk about humans using it. Of course, we know the Quel'Dari. The Kaldari can use it, so I don't know when that happens, but yeah, they absolutely can. The Scourge do their own version, which is necromantic. Now, that's really dark energy and fel energy, so I don't know, again, if those are the same things or if fel is like a flavor of the arcane. They distrust magic, but much like in D&D, that doesn't mean you kill them on sight. Using the arcane, in this case, there's no real backlash. It says they have little to fear from it. But again, the Night Elves, they don't like it. So the other type of magic is divine magic. So the origins of divine magic are varied. And I guess that's true depending on whether you're considering nature or not. And the Kaldari get their holy magic from Elune. And that's true. That's true still for Night Elf priests. Now, Cenarius really, that's more considered nature magic. It's different from holy or light magic, and I don't think he gives them magic necessarily because he's a demigod. But they're just kind of going over some things, and even this is a little bit redundant within this very book, but this does talk some about the Horde Shamans, the Night Elf Druids, the Tauren Druids. The Dwarves, now they can be mages. This just doesn't say that much about them. I know in Dungeons and Dragons, depending on which edition, dwarves can't use magic, but some can. Okay, of the Horde, we know the Tauren and the Orcs can have their magic. The Horde, the Orcs can use a bunch, and the Tauren, not really. I think originally they could just be druids. That was their only way of getting any type of magic. Maybe priests, but I don't think so. Now they can be, I think they can be shamans, and they just recently can be mages. They are priests. The other races, humans and high elves. There are other gods, which I think is, yeah. See, they say godlike entities. There are the dragons, and here they give the five, so that's cool. There's the legion, which are like the demons. The old gods are even more. Says the Titans defeated the old gods and chained the raging beings deep beneath the earth, where supposedly they remain to this day. Yeah, they are the opposition to the Titans. If the Titans are good, as they say right here, it's the old gods that are evil, and the Burning Legion or something else. All right, so that's just, they wanted to set that up and talk about the types of magic and where the magic comes from before we look at the spells. So the first thing they're doing are just giving some slight changes to Dungeons and Dragons spells. We're not going to go over them, but if you can just see, they're basically saying these things could be imagined to exist within the World of Warcraft universe as well. I'm not seeing anything particularly. Flame Strike is a World of Warcraft spell also. I don't even think Plane Shift is. Sure, monster summoning, kind of. They make a note on the positive, negative, and shadow planes. All right, what's more interesting is the new spells. Okay, Banish. So Banish, that's a spell. I believe that's a Warlock spell. So that stays. Blade Storm. Now that's a warrior's move, but that does stay. That's what's it called? A Fury Warrior move. Blizzard is a main Frost Mage spell. Bloodlust is a shaman spell. Cannibalize is a racial trait of the Forsaken. Carrion Swarm, that's kind of like the Death Knight move. So there's sort of, you know what? No, there's an insect swarm or something I think that druids can do too. Cripple. They move at a slowed rate. There's a crippling poison for rogues. There's a lot of moves that kind of do that. Death Coil is 100% a spell, so it's traveled from the Warcraft, and it will continue to travel to World of Warcraft for Death Knights. There's later lesser and greater. Death Pact. What does this do? An undead creature is destroyed, and you gain its life. I do think that a Death Knight has a similar move to that. Tangling Roots, that's a main druid move. Force of Nature, that was from Warcraft. It is a druid thing, and I think it stays into Warcraft. Greater Force of Nature. Frost Armor is a mage spell. It's a pretty cool picture of a druid with his Force of Nature. Frost Nova stays in effect. Healing Rain, I do think maybe shamans have something called Healing Rain. That's one of their, if you were a restoration shaman, you can do something like that. Healing Ward, that was in Warcraft 3. Maybe that's also a shaman thing, I think. Immolation is a I think it's a warlock power, but I also think that might be what it's the demon hunter power is called. Lightning Shield is a shaman power. Mana Burn, that might be the Blood Elf racial. Don't really remember. Moonglaive I don't think is actually a power that comes. I don't think anybody gets that. There might be some sort of spec that I'm not thinking about right now where you can get a sort of a chakra or a glaive. But I don't know. Rain of Fire is a warlock one. Rejuvenation is a druid healing. Roar, filling his allies. That's sort of like the shouts that the warriors get. Second Soul is a res. It's a level 9 healer spell. Casting time 10 minutes. So a lot of classes get that, but none of them are called Second Soul. Sentinel, that is from the Warcraft game. There are similar spells that hunters get. And Farsight for shaman. but it's not quite the same. But hunters have a version of that. Serpent Ward. That was from the game. That was one of the things that your little dark troll can have. It says it's a totem, so maybe there's a serpent ward that shaman do, and I just can't remember. Shadow Meld is that racial power of the night elves. Shockwave is the racial Tauren power. There might be another spelled version of that. Starfall, OP druid move. Stasis Trap. There is the static or whatever it's called. There is that totem that you can put down. Maybe it's called Stasis Trap. It's one of my favorite shaman moves. It's you put it down, and after a few seconds, it goes off, and then you can have like a spect or something like that to where you get like a bunch of seconds off its reuse. I love using it, actually. It's one of my favorite stuns in the game. Stormhammer is what the Wild Hammer Dwarves use. God, the only thing I can think of is that there's warriors have, I mean, paladins do too, but warriors have a hammer throw type of move that they can use. Thorn Shield. You are covered in thorns. Nah. That, I don't think anybody keeps that. Not that I can think of. Touch of Life. Briefly brings a creature back to life. Temporarily restores life. Okay. And it says, I'm wondering, like, what's the point? The spell, they immediately drop dead again. Yeah, so you bring someone back for a few, that's weird. I don't know why. I guess that's sort of like a raised dead within Warcraft 3. Unholy Frenzy. That was from the Warcraft 3 game. Target gains the strength and speed of the undead, but also suffers damage. I can't think of a buff where you go into rage, but you're also slowly draining your life. I can't think of that. Except the sort of the Warlock speed move where you set yourself on fire and run. I don't know. So that's neat. I mean, really, this is more, it's less cool than I thought, because a lot of the spells where we're going to see some overlap between this and World of Warcraft, they're actually just because Warcraft 3 already brought them. So this isn't really bringing anything new to the fray, other than maybe that one Dungeons and Dragons spell that I talked about at the beginning. All right, so let's read this flavor text, and that will wrap this chapter up. It's all falling apart, Under Chief Baraga said, sprawled on the thick fur-bold hides that littered the reception hall of Sharga's stronghold. What's falling apart? Yawned Chieftain Sharga. He did not bother looking up from the map sprawled on his campaign table. The world, Baraga said. It's all about to tip into the twisting nether. You just watch. Sharga gave a non-committal grunt and reached for another map. Baraga had a strong sword arm and was as fearless as a troll, but he whined whenever he was not in the thick of action. Still, Sharga found the orc's brooding to be strangely comforting. If he was complaining, at least he was not plotting against his superior. Think about it. Wherever we go, things are always falling down on our pointed ears. Baraga pulled himself to his feet and started pacing. From back in the beginning, we rule an entire world only to see it get swallowed up. We just managed to escape here before it did. The lout speaks as if he was there, rather than something that happened generations ago. In a calm tone, Chieftain Sharga offered a correction. Actually, we came here first. And then, our leaders at the time, the Warlocks, screwed things up so badly that we lost that first world. Baraga was hardly listening. So we come to Azeroth and it gets roughed up by undead and demon spawn. Again, I think some orcs were involved somewhere in that as well, Sharga said, actually with Merjul, one of the top people. Some of the same warlocks as the first time, to be accurate. So we escape again on ships stolen from humans and come to Kalimdor, to find ourselves in the middle of another huge war against more undead and demons. Which, Sharga said, we won. He looked at a spot on the map, frowned, then reached for a heavy-bound atlas. Aye, but what have we won? The younger orc steamed. This is a broken land. There are ruins on top of ruins here. The coasts are littered with half-sunken ships. Petty kingdoms rise and fall like clockwork. Everyone with a sword and 3 followers wants to make himself war chief. If Fields have been scorched to stubble, livestock slaughtered or gone feral. Most of the buildings here burned down at least once. Interesting, Sharga remarked almost to himself. This map shows some old stronghold at the headwaters of the river, but later atlases don't show it. Do you know what that means? Exactly what I am saying, Baraga snarled. This place is a wreck, a mess, a pile of debris, 2 steps from the twisted nether with the demons banging on the doors. Sharga sighed and rose from the table, walking to the window. This level of the stronghold was even with the treetops. He saw a vast green carpet spread out to the base of a line of snow-capped peaks. Somewhere among those peaks were headwaters, and by those headwaters a lost city. Titan ruins, if the map notation was correct, filled with secrets and treasure. Yet all Baraga could do was complain that it had been lost in the first place. A pillar of smoke rose from the forest off to the right about 2 days' ride away by Wolfback, and a mighty blaze, given how easily he could make it out. It could be a natural lightning strike or forest fire, or it could be something worse. Invaders, perhaps, or some battle between forces Sharga knew nothing about. Maybe a funeral pyre. Maybe a chimera carving out a roost. Maybe dwarves with their steam tanks on their way to this lost stronghold. Whatever it was, the fact remained that the blaze was 2 days' ride away. If it was trouble, it would come soon enough. He would send out extra grunts on evening patrol, just in case. Aloud, the chieftain said, "Look at the world beyond our windows, Baraga. Here is an ancient world with old treasures lost among ancient vegetation, fallen cities high within the mountains, and more knowledge lost than even the humans had in the days of Lordaeron. It's a world that is starting anew. What do you see when you look out the window?" "I see a world that is ruined. That which isn't already ruined is burning, and that which isn't already burning isn't worth having," Baraga snorted. "What do you see?" "I," Chieftain Sharga said, his lips twisting around his great fangs in a satisfied smile. "Opportunities, my lad. What I see are opportunities." Alright, so cool. We got these other CGI cinematic things. So let's see. We got a little bit to go to wrap up this and see if there's any contributions left before we move on to the next piece of it. But interesting little snippets of the creator's mind in creating this Dungeons and Dragons version. Hey, I appreciate everyone as always for watching and for listening this latest episode of Lore of Warcraft. This one in the pipe, 5x5.